Always a pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to speak with the Secretary of Transportation. We got to know and appreciate him as Mayor Pete. We now call him Secretary Pete. Secretary Pete Buttigieg joins us. I'll make it plain. Mr. Secretary, welcome back. How are you, sir?
Thanks. Good to be with you. I'm doing well. Hope you are too.
I am. I'm doing quite well. We have been talking about the bipartisan infrastructure law. How is that going? What's the assessment like, and what kind of progress have we made?
Well, we spent most of our first years in administration working to get that law passed, and President Biden believed in it from day one. But it wasn't until almost the end of the year that it actually got through, and he was able to sign it. Then we spent most of our second year building all of the programs it created, dozens of programs just in this department alone, to do everything from fix bridges to improve airport terminals to shoring up ferry systems. Now we're in the third year, and if the first year was the bill passing and the second year was the programs launching, this is really the money moving, and increasingly we're starting to see the dirt flying. This year and next year, we are going to see more and more projects enter into the construction phase. And what excites me about that is not just the finished product that we all look forward to, whether it's a reconstructed bridge or a new train service, but along the way, the jobs that it is creating. And this includes jobs in a lot of communities that have been neglected in the past, but are getting funding. We've got 37,000 projects under this infrastructure law, administration-wide, that have been identified for funding, and we're not even halfway through.
The other thing that's important, too, that inevitably creates jobs, doesn't it?
Exactly. And these are good paying jobs, these construction jobs, trades jobs. And, unlike when there's just one project coming into your community, we got a real pipeline going, which means people can confidently know that if they choose to participate in an apprenticeship program or take up a career in these fields, and I'm not just talking about things that require a college degree, but a lot of jobs, skilled jobs that are going to require training, but not necessarily 4 years at university. You know that there's going to be work, not just this year, next year, but for many years to come. So we're really excited about the job creation potential. We think it's one of the reasons why unemployment is so low right now. It's very, very rare to have unemployment and inflation both below 4% at the same time. And that didn't just happen on its own. That's part of what we mean when we're talking about Bidenomics, is making the public investments to create the kinds of jobs in the public and private sector. They're going to keep our economy moving forward.
Yeah, no, it's important. I was at the NAACP convention last month, and there was a whole conversation about opening up the building and trades apprenticeships to young African Americans and other young people of color to get into this pipeline, because that's important to get to some of these jobs.
Absolutely. This is a great ladder into the middle class. It's a great way to earn a good living. And look, historically, it has not always been the case that these building trades jobs have been open to workers of color, at least not as frequently. And there's been a sense that, unless your dad and your dad's dad was in this line of work, you didn't have a shot at it. That's changing. And we're really working to highlight the locals and the organizations that are doing a good job of being more inclusive, also bringing more women into the workforce and solving some of the issues that have kept many workers out. I'll give you an example. I was in Pittsburgh with the First Lady recently. Mm-hmm. We were highlighting one of the workforce hubs that the administration set up there. They've actually set up childcare on the work site at the airport where they're building out a new terminal there, because they know that if childcare is available on site, more working parents are going to be able to participate in those good paying jobs that just wouldn't be open to them because they didn't have a childcare solution. So we're working hard to make sure this happens. We never want it to be the case that somebody, and we've heard this too often from people often in black and brown neighborhoods, they see a project finally come to the neighborhood, but nobody working on it looks like they grew up in the neighborhood. We're shifting that with local hire provisions. We're working with the building trades to open more of those doors. And I think the results are going to benefit everybody.
No, that's very important. Child care on the job, that's amazing. Congratulations on that. Very big deal. You've appointed members to the Advisory Committee on Transportation Equity. Tell us about that committee, please.
That's right. So we know that equity is an important part of every decision in public policy. That's certainly true about transportation. We want to make sure we get this right, especially with the historic levels of funding that are going out right now. So I've asked a number of men and women from around the country to form a diverse group. They're going to be led by Anthony Foxx, who used to be Secretary of Transportation, like me, a former mayor. He was the mayor of Charlotte. And during his time serving under President Obama, was really somebody who paved the way for a lot of the work we're doing now, pointing to the issues around how highways were built and what it's going to take to have more equitable transportation in the future. So I think with his leadership and with the distinguished members we're assembling, they're going to be able to bring and elevate voices that need to be heard. They're going to give insight that we really need in order to make good decisions. I always am careful and selective about when to launch a new process like this and create a committee or a task force. We don't do it lightly because we don't want just dozens of groups kind of out there. We want there to be very mission-driven, high-speed advisory groups that are helping inform big decisions. And that's exactly what this Advisory Committee on Transportation Equity is going to do.
I infer too, because you and I have talked about this before, and you've talked with many others about this, dealing with communities that have been impacted by transportation decisions in the past, highway splitting communities. As a matter of fact, I happen to be in Nashville today with the two Justins around this Tennessee legislative session on guns. Nashville is one of those cities that was divided by the highway, the black community divided by the highway. So when we talk about transportation equity, is this committee also going to think about and talk about ways to fix some of those past injustices?
Absolutely. And again, this is one reason why I'm excited to be teaming up with Secretary Fox, because he spoke very eloquently about how this affected him personally and was a part of the built environment in Charlotte. We see this everywhere we go. But what was not available when Secretary Fox was in this seat is the billions of dollars of funding that we now have to address these issues in a way that's going to connect communities back together and lift them up. Right now, we're supporting projects like one in Detroit that's taking a section of I-375 that really just ripped through neighborhoods, Paradise Valley and Black Bottom neighborhoods. We're going to lift up that depressed highway that's like a gash in the community, and we're going to elevate it to street surface level, and it's going to be a boulevard, still move cars through effectively, but in a way that helps, not hurts the neighborhood. In Buffalo, we're teaming up with the state of New York to take the Kensington Expressway, which community members there have been trying to do something about for decades. And we're going to put a cap over it, which is going to introduce new land into the heart of the city. And it's going to connect neighborhoods that were severed and made harder to get to by the way that highway was originally constructed. From St. Paul, Minnesota to Pittsburgh, this is not just the South. This is every part of the country has had some version of this. And when we talk about this and lean into it, it's not about making people feel bad. It's not about wallowing in some of the problems of the past. It's about fixing it. When you break something, you ought to put it right. And, federal dollars went into creating some of these problems. Now federal dollars are going to go into helping to fix it. But we can't make good decisions about that without a lot of insight, input, ideas, and concerns coming from communities and coming from a diverse sounding board. And that's one of the reasons why I think this advisory committee will play an important role in helping us make wise decisions with these really generous but still limited dollars.
And of course, the members of the committee also reflect diversity and come from different regions around the country, correct?
That's right. We got folks from different parts of the country, different professional backgrounds, even different ideological backgrounds. It's not all people who are going to agree with me or agree with each other on everything. That's the point. That's what real dialogue is. And so with this mix of expertise, I think we're going to make better decisions than we could have otherwise. We got folks from the private sector, we got folks from the public sector, we've got participation really from a broad range of experts. And too often in the past, big transportation decisions were made without enough input, or with input that only came from one side of the house. And when you do that, serious mistakes and serious harms can happen. We're not going to do that this time. And we know that this is a once-in-a-lifetime investment. We may never see this level of funding again in our lifetimes. After Democrats and some Republicans came together and said, all right, it's been 40, 50 years, let's do this right. We're doing it now. I want to make sure we get it right. This one and only chance that we have, at least on my watch, to put these dollars to use in ways that will benefit everybody. And the other thing I think is so important to say here is that when you correct some of these harms, when you address the transportation deserts that have arisen in some communities, or the experience that many neighborhoods, including a lot of black and brown neighborhoods, of being cut off. When you address that, everybody's going to be better off. Certainly the people who are harmed most directly, but also nobody's hurt when you stitch a community back together that was divided in the past. When we empower those who were disempowered in the past, I think it's going to lift the whole country up.
Certainly. Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation, talking about the bipartisan infrastructure law. And for most of you listening, it is probably already beginning to have an impact where you live. Very important. I think, Ms. Secretary, is this the biggest thing that the federal government has done since doing the highways, since Eisenhower? This is a pretty big deal.
Certainly, as far as infrastructure is concerned, that's right. I mean, this is the most we've done for public transit ever in federal history. It's the most we've done on roads and bridges since the Eisenhower years. It's the most we've done for passenger rails since they set up Amtrak in the first place 50 years ago. So these really are historic funds. But we know that just because you got the dollars through Congress, and that's just the beginning. Now we got to actually put those dollars to work, turn them into good paying jobs, and turn them into good infrastructure that's going to help people get to school and to church and to the store and wherever they need to be. It's going to connect people more safely. It's going to mean that when you walk across the street, you're walking across a safer street, that you're less likely to be in a collision. We're going to make sure that transportation is cleaner, and that neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods close to highways or close to ports, that those kids are breathing cleaner air than they would have a generation ago, or than they are today. These are the kinds of things we have a chance to do right now. And it is why it's such an exciting, historic time to be working in transportation.
It is. Obviously it is. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for joining us on Make It Plain.